You're the director of the film Torn, which is about the poster wars in New York City in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. But for those who need a little more context, tell us about the pitch of the film. Like, what's it all about? Why should you care?
I moved to New York 13 years ago, and the city, whether you like it or not, and it doesn't matter if you're on this side or if you're on that side, the city did split. There are so many important films, documentaries, but not just, that are about October 7 and the war in Gaza. And they are being done by both Israelis and Palestinians, but also European and Americans that have boots on the ground and right now are there. As a New Yorker, I honestly didn't want to make this film. I thought I had to make this film because I found myself asking a lot of questions about what has become of the city that I call home and what changed in it. And starting October 7 and going forward, I had to channel my questions somewhere. So I would say the way to explore how I felt was through making this film. The film doesn't focus on the kidnapped posters. It focuses on the ripple effects of the kidnapped posters. We got, when the Academy starting focusing on different films that are in the for your consideration this year, they chose Torn, and I saw that in the comments someone wrote, a film about posters? Like, what are they doing? And for me, then when someone watches the film, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that you made a film that is so layered, and it's about the posters. So it is about the posters, but it's about people. It's about relationships, and it's about your relationship with your friends, your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with your Judaism and identity. And not to sound too cliche, but it's like everything is torn. It's not just the social fabric of the city. It's not just the posters. It's our identities, and it's basically everything. The Hebrew name for torn, I called it tlushim, and it's not just there is a pun in it, but it also means detached in plural. Like the Jews are kind of like detached from the city. So it has a similar meaning, but also a different meaning.
Yeah, and just to fill in the gaps there, for people who don't know, like October 7th was a Hamas terrorist attack in Israel, and it had tremendous ripple effects in the West, as we're seeing today, continuing to unfold, as everyone was anticipating an Israeli response. And immediately as Hamas took people hostage, they kidnapped them.
So yeah, I want to pause on that. Like the 251 hostages that were kidnapped were from over 40 nationalities. Germany all the way to Tanzania.
Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand, Nepal.
Sri Lanka.
And a lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans, a lot of people with dual identities, but a lot of visitors and foreigners. They were from all religions. So when I my hat now is a documentary filmmaker, but when this thing started, my first thing that I did was, how do I amplify the fact that these hostages need to be let out immediately, instead of being pawns, which of course they were. And
what do you mean they were pawns?
They were pawns. They were pawns because Hamas, it's not the first time that Hamas kidnaps Israelis, whether it's soldiers or citizens. It's not the first time that the Jewish community as a whole, or Israel as a whole, so if you zoom out, it's not the first time that Hamas kidnaps people. You zoom out a little bit, it's not the first time that Israel had its people kidnapped. You go to Entebbe. But it's also not the first time that Jews were kidnapped. You can go back 1,000 years and there's a Jewish prayer where Jews are asking for help from God to help release the hostages. And this is the prayer that was used these past 2 years, and people were praying it in temple. So what was important for me as someone that volunteered with the hostage headquarters, both in New York and in Israel, was to convey the thing that this is an international crisis, and the hostages are everyone. There were, Palestinian Israelis that were kidnapped. There were Muslim Israelis that were kidnapped. So that is something that kind of like got lost, and
right, and it's almost like we have to pad it with that information because Israelis or Jews alone being kidnapped isn't enough for people.
You know what? You are so right. And every time I say the fact that these are people from over 40 nationalities, I have to say that I forget to mention what you just mentioned. And it's really, really unfortunate. And I also feel kind of bad that I even need to say this. Yeah.
But going back to the film, just so people who are hopefully watching, fresh eyes that we want to get on this.
So if I'll sorry, I know. You asked me a question and I'm going on.
Yeah, I just wanted to fill in one bit that you can obviously then comment on, which is for those who weren't tuned in, what we all witnessed living in New York City or just on social media is that these hostage kidnap posters started going up, right? And people, at the time it was crazy, now we're so desensitized to it, but at the time people would come and till this day tear them down, and you could see this all across America. And so that's what the film is really about, right, is the people putting them up and then the people tearing them down, and that's the poster wars. So can you tell me, first of all, were you surprised?
So I will just add to that the film explores this phenomenon through the mosaic of about 10 individuals, because some of them appear more and some of them less. They all have skin in the game to some degree. Some have their family hostages and are New Yorkers, and some are activists. There's a freedom of speech expert, but there's also a rabbi, and of course there are the people that tear down the posters. So I would say between 10 to 20 people that are leading you or navigating you in this battle of narratives. And the film takes you on this journey throughout the first 3 months of the war, from October 7 to the day the first hostage deal happened, which is around Thanksgiving 2023. So 3 months, kind of like a time capsule of what has happened in winter of 2023. And I chose that specific period, one, because I had to kind of like, I'm making a film while there's a war. I never thought that the war would last 2 years. But also because once the hostages, about 100 of them were released by Hamas, we saw less and less posters. People still put them up, but we saw less and less posters. Christmas came, so that is kind of like why I chose to focus on that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, it still happens. I'll still be in other cities around America and see it, but that was definitely the first kind of phase of the craziness. Now, you were talking about like New York City being torn, and I'm just curious, as someone who's lived there for like around a decade, were you surprised that happened?
I was very surprised. When I asked my subjects, the interviewees of the film, which are all amazing, and I was able to find myself and find answers in each and every one of them. But when I asked that question to them, they said no, and I was surprised. I was surprised because when I first saw the kidnap posters coming up, I told myself, this is a tool for people to show that they care, to show their grief. And I was very proud of someone doing it. It's like you're in a foreign city and you see that someone has a flag of your soccer team that you like. You see yourself in that, in that windowsill at the end of the world, right? It's like seeing a mezuzah at the end of the world. It's like seeing a pride flag at the end of the world. So for me, seeing those hostage posters was like, my city is showing up. My city shows that it cares. And then when I first saw the posters being torn down, it was, of course, when I was doom scrolling, and I honestly, I couldn't believe it. I remember it was a Williamsburg video, and there's like a construction wall with a green kind of like fence or
construction
thingy,
thing.
And you just see a woman tearing one poster after the other, and there's another person engaging with her and saying, "What are you doing? Why are you doing it?" And she just keeps on doing it. And this happened very early on, a day or two, I would say, a day or two after October 7th. So yeah, I was shocked that it happened.
And thinking back on it, everything that's gone on, in the West, in the culture wars around this issue, it almost feels like a small thing, right? I feel like we've been so desensitized where we present that to someone and be like, oh yeah, that...
Of course it happened.
Yeah, of course. But I remember when it was happening, it was like crazy, because if you saw a kidnapped kid poster just, I don't know, from the neighborhood, you wouldn't rip it down. Or the comedic and almost, I guess, tragic irony, really tragic irony, is oftentimes they would rip it down, you'd see it ripped in half, and next to it remain an intact missing dog poster.
I want to give you two stories. The first story is that I screened the film in front of an audience of older people. Most of them were Jewish, but not all. And a person asked me, when you screen your film, people ask you, what will happen in the Middle East? What will happen? Like you become this spokesperson for everything. So someone asked me, what will happen when people forget in 10 or 20 years about October 7? And, I came up with like certain answers, and then on the way back home, I told myself, this is not the answer I should have given. So the answer that I should have given is like, people will remember October 7. Of course, it's not like, when a generation goes through trauma, of course, it gets erased and metamorphed through the decades. But I think what people will definitely will not remember is the poster war. And that's just an example. Like if you look at microaggressions, you can look at statistics. You can look at like statistics of hate crimes and see, okay, this was a spike in the life of Jews in New York. But emotions and feelings and tearing down a piece of paper, that's not something. Okay, that happened, and I think that. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but to focus on something that looks so, just like a minor thing, like posters were ripped down. I'm happy that I have it on film. And when I made the film, the first thing I said is like, paper get bleached from the sun and the rain washes it away, so I'm happy I did it. But I thought about it in the more technical sense. I didn't think about it as if like of course I'm capturing emotions when they are still raw, but time moves on and you have perspective, and then I realized that the film, unfortunately, is going to have longer legs than I anticipated.
I think so. I think ripping down posters of missing or kidnapped people is a big deal. And I think the fact that it kind of feels like it isn't really is indicative of how extreme the opposition to the Jewish or the Israeli side has become. The normalization of radicalism and escalating hateful speech and dehumanization, that the posters kind of feel like, oh yeah, those pieces of paper at this point.
So I'll tell you that, we are, as someone who also does commercial work, and lives in America, diversity is very important. And I remember when I was looking at hundreds and hundreds of videos of people ripping down the posters, I thought to myself, wow, it's so diverse. Like everyone is ripping down the posters.
Yeah, we're uniting society.
Yeah, we're uniting society. Every age group, every ethnical background, they're all having.
No one can unite people like the Jews.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, I mean, on a serious note, like that's how populism works. I mean, that you say there's these one group of people who are the problem, and people are like, hey, we may not agree on this, and that. I might be far right, you might be far left, but let's go rip those posters down together.
Correct, but when you talk about that, you talk about history books, you talk about theory, and then when it actually happens, as a Jew or as someone who's not Jew, you can say, it's kind of like that, but maybe it's not exactly like that, so don't call it what it is. Don't give it a name. Don't say it's anti-Semitic. Don't say it's... and I think part of the pain is the constant gaslighting.
Devalidating of what you're experiencing, what your grandparents or great-grandparents experienced a form of in early stages.
I have a lot of thoughts about the Holocaust, not because we're experiencing something similar, we're not, but I'm thinking about all the stories that were lost. You talk a lot about, in the news, people that survived October 7 and people that survived it but committed suicide soon after, or they haven't recovered, because as people that live in the present, you only hear from Holocaust survivors that made it, right? That have kids and their kids live to tell their stories. You never hear about the people that had PTSD and everyone thought they were crazy. And I think it's also relevant for today. People post-October 7 that are still, have lost 2 or 3 kids at the Nova party, and now they are on their own in the world, and the world was shattered, and so...
Right, and you have a character in your film who will go and he'll take ripped up posters and piece them back together at his apartment, and that's very symbolic of what you're saying of, it's almost our job to piece together the discarded remnants of history that other people try to bury or ignore.
I think he's doing something very similar to what Elisha, he's doing something very similar to what I'm doing, which is kind of like remembering and piecing it together, I would say, is there is a scene in the film where people are drawing swastikas on an Israeli flag, and then they burn it, and then this other guy comes and kind of like takes the flag away from them, and they fight. In one of the screenings, this woman came up to me and said, "This is the flag from your film," and she gave it to me. And there is something different when you're, when you're watching something on screen, and then you see the physical manifestation or the physical object.
How'd she have it?
The guy who's kind of like saved the flag just gave it to her.
Ah, okay.
And she wanted to meet me and give it to me. She did, yeah.
Here's your swastika.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it to, I don't know, to someone who I think, yeah. But I will I want to tell you something that happened a few days ago, which I think you will find interesting. So I had over the past year about 100 in-person screenings, and everywhere I was invited, I went to. And it's super important for me to screen the film in colleges and universities. So I've done screenings at Harvard and Columbia and Stanford and NYU, Parsons and Pratt, but also in Missouri, I don't know, like all over the United States. And I had a screening this week that I'm not going to say where. And the screening went really well. And then I talked with the professor. It was over Zoom. And a lot of the kids today, it's not mandatory for them to turn on the cameras. So it was kind of like a one-sided conversation. They also didn't ask me questions. It was through the professor who asked the questions. So after an hour of, I think, of a conversation that was very, very engaging, the professor said, I had a question from multiple people in the classroom. And I'm just going to ask you, it wasn't even formed as a question. She said, the professor said, it's about the whiteness of the posters. And I was really like, I was like, I spoken for an hour, and this is the only question that came up from multiple people in the classroom. And I thought it says more about the people asking the question than the question itself. And I can tell you what I told them, but I was...
When they say whiteness of the poster, like people in the posters are white?
Yes.
Okay.
What did you think?
I don't know. The physical poster is white?
No.
No, but it's confusing because I've seen most of the posters and they're filled with people of all different ethnicities and backgrounds.
Yeah, I actually emailed the professor today again to confirm that I heard the question correctly. And the question is, I think it hurt me or surprised me because like you're watching a 75-minute film. It raises so many different questions about freedom of speech and about empathy and about navigating your opinions and about the fact that multiple things can be true at the same time and about how do we have a conversation, how do we disagree with each other respectfully, and did I screen the film into a Palestinian audience or Muslim audiences, and what questions were I asked? But that was the question that came from multiple students. And I think I was very surprised and saddened by this question.
What was your answer?
I said that anyone that has been in Israel or read a little bit about the history of Israel would know that more than 60% of Israelis have dark skin. They are Jews that were ethnically cleansed from Arab Muslim countries in the 20th century, but also before. And they had nowhere else to go than Israel. And in the other half of Israel, which are the white Jews, were not white enough for Hitler or for Europeans, so they endured pogroms and the Holocaust, and they had to escape, and no country on earth wanted them and then that's why they came to Israel. There's a photo that was taken in Germany 100 years ago that says Jews go to Palestine, and there's a photo of someone juxtaposed them. So there's another photo that someone's holding. It says Jews go to Europe.
Right. Keep bouncing back and
yes.
forth on holiday.
And I was very, very, and so that was kind of like the first answer I gave them. But then I zoomed out and I said, you guys are in college, you are critical thinkers, you are here to ask questions, and I'm asking you not to copy and paste what you know on life and use it to explain to yourself other things that are happening in the world. So if there's a thing that is happening and you're trying to research about it, please treat it as a standalone. Maybe in the beginning you would need to explain it to yourself, but if you do just a little bit of investigation, you understand that things can stand alone and you don't need metaphors and you don't need to compare things to things all the time. And you also don't need to look at the world as a binary. And there's so much gray in this spectrum of black and white. And yeah, you know, it's like how we opened the conversation, that 251 people were kidnapped and they are Jews of many colors, but there's also the, you know, in the film, I opened the film with Liam, who puts a poster of his cousin's daughter, and someone tells him, if you really care about what's happening, you would put up posters of the Palestinian kids. And when Liam says, she's my cousin's daughter, the guy tells him she looks like a white colonizer. Again, Liam is a Yemenite Jew. And the film ends with, you just see the raw hate and the ugliness, not just of one side. Like, you see the two sides kind of like clashing and saying horrible things to each other. It's shot in, I would say, North Williamsburg. You see the Dunkin' Donuts and a lot of people, Israeli flags, Palestinian flags. And then this guy who is very white tells a woman who is dark-skinned that she's a genocidal KKK cunt. And what she does is she rolls up her sleeve and she's like saying, you're calling me a white colonizer. He also calls her a white colonizer. So she rolls up her sleeve and she's saying, you're calling me a white colonizer. And of course, like, she's Jewish. He's just like a regular guy that thinks he knows better. So I think, you know, the bookends of the film really confused the audience. So maybe that's why they asked it, but it still surprised me a lot, this question.
So people are naturally going to ask, especially if you want to attract people who might disagree with you, why didn't you interview the people who were taking down the posters? What's your response to that?
I would ask the question differently. I would ask, who do you have on the other side? If it's a documentary film and you're trying to... No, sorry, I will just answer your question. In the film, there's several ways that I incorporated the other side. One is, of course, through the videos of the people that ripped down the posters. I browsed the internet and I took hundreds of videos, and then I curated the ones that gave a reasoning, an explanation, an excuse of why they are tearing down the posters. So it's kind of like different conversations that the poster rippers are having with the person that is filming them. So that's one bucket of the narrative of why they're ripping down the posters. Another thing I did was I brought 3 different interviews with people that went on live TV and talked about why they were caught ripping down the posters. So these are not interviews that I
But
held.
why didn't anyone sit down for an interview with you?
Okay, so that's what I was getting at. I reached out when I'm making this film to dozens of people that ripped down the posters. I knew their details because they were doxxed. So I had their names. Sometimes I had their Instagram accounts. Sometimes I reached out to them on their LinkedIn's or Gmails or GoFundMe pages. GoFundMe pages because they were doxxed and canceled and they asked the community to give them money. But, they didn't want to engage. Some of them didn't reply, even though they, how you send an Instagram DM and you see that they saw it. And some said that they said everything there is to say. So I had a creative problem of how am I bringing their side to the film without having them in the film. So I did fill these two buckets with people talking about why are they tearing it in real time, and also people that are interviewed to live television and are having a conversation of why they did it. But this wasn't enough for me, because what I really wanted is a conversation between the pro-Israeli activists to the pro-Palestinian activists. So the way I solved it, which I didn't know if it would work or not, but this is one of the parts that I'm getting the most praises about, which I'm very happy, is I solved it by kind of giving this manifest of reasoning why they are ripping the posters down. And I gave it to one of the subjects to read, and she responds to it. It happens twice in the film. And her answers were very thoughtful. And, she's not like, oh, now I understand and problem solved, but she is saying something that is this is something that I can work with. We can have a conversation if you raise these questions. And I think it's kind of the closest I could get to a real conversation with someone on the other side. And I just want to say that it is a dilemma because, I would be able, when I was making the film, to bring someone on the other side. And I did reach out to even MIT professors that, told me the posters are an initiative by the Israeli government. And I'm I'm not going to interview this professor from MIT because then people will blame me for bringing only the really radical voices of the other side. So it's also kind of a question you ask yourself.
And to be clear, the posters were done by two artists, right?
Two artists that stopped everything they were doing for a year, and that's everything they did. They did it to raise awareness. They did it because they cared, just like a lot of other people on both sides stopped everything they did and devoted their cause to get the hostages out, to stop the killing in Gaza of innocent Palestinians, you name it. So there's so many different ways people took to stop their lives and took a side.
But I feel like your film is really about holding two forms of empathy at once, or two empathies in the same room, two grievances, two plights. And the issue I really see is that you and many other people like you, who are probably more center-left, even firmly on the left, but Jewish Zionists, are trying to have a conversation. And there's no one on the other side to have that conversation with. They call, especially with an Israeli, but just also someone who identifies with Israel on any level, they call it normalization, right? So how do we get past that? Is there a way to get past that? Do we have to hold their empathy for them?
When I made the film, it was clear to me that I'm not going to be able to talk to them. They don't want anything to do with me because of who I am, because of my identity. It doesn't even matter what I say. My film is not for them. I would love it if they watched my film, but my film is for the silent majority, and my film is for, I've heard people approached me and said that they are confused. and they have friends on both sides and they want to learn more. There's a story I heard about a guy who ripped out down a poster and later started volunteering with hostage families. So that stuff happens, but it's kind of like traces back to Muslim countries that, as you said, don't want normalizations with Israel, because then it means that, like, if I speak with you, it means that you exist, and I need to hear you out. And it took me a while myself, but I decided this past few months that even if I disagree with someone and they used to be my friends or they are still my friends and I disagree with them, I'm not going to unfriend them, and I'm going to talk to them, and I'm going to let them know that I disagree with them and I want to hear their side. And this is something, since the elections for the mayor of New York, this is something that I started doing because I have a lot of friends that vote differently than me, and I still want to hear them out and understand where they are coming from. But yeah, like, another extension of this is BDS. And, the most hilarious story or example I found was the fact that No Other Land, that won the Oscar 2025, was boycotted by the BDS movement because it's a collaboration between Israelis and Palestinians, even though it's a Norwegian Palestinian film. Like, the two heroes and filmmakers are an Israeli and Palestinian. So it is really, what can you do? You can just laugh about it, right?
Right, and also groups like Standing Together, they're as left as you can go in Israel, but they're boycotted because it's normalization. Correct. And they believe in the state of Israel.
Correct.
Even though they're like literally the most critical people of it every day. I think there's so much more to talk about, Zohran Mamdani being elected, what his constituents are like, the stuff.
I would love, if Zohran watches this video, I would love to screen the film to him. I think that the film advocates that unfortunately there's so much pain, but there are enough lampposts and walls in New York City to hold each other's griefs. I wish that we would not fight, but if we do fight, we need to hear each other's stories, and we don't have to agree with everything, but we do need to hear each other out. And the fact that posters were torn because this Jewish grief doesn't matter, and it competes with my grief, and that is why I'm ripping it down. I think it is, it's kind of like I don't know how to say it in English, like iconoclast, like in Middle Ages when they destroyed paintings or works of art. So yeah, I would love for people that mostly disagree, like I say, like, bring a friend you disagree with and a friend you agree with and watch the film together.
The problem is, your film, having seen it, it's very even-handed. It shows horrific scenes from Gaza of war and destruction and kids in violent turmoil. It acknowledges the pain on both sides, but it's still viewed as a Zionist or Israeli-coded film, because the conclusion of the film is not the state of Israel needs to be destroyed, right? And so
I was also called the Students for Justice in Palestine for Parsons said that the movie is genocidal.
Right, and Zohran Mamdani, the mayor now, was the leader of the Students for Justice in Palestine. So he's a whole other conversation. I don't think Jews in New York are scared that he himself will do something to us with the government. I think what they're scared of is what we experienced after October 7th with things like the posters and many more forms of harassment and violence will go unchecked. And he will skirt around them, and whenever there's anti-Semitic violence, he'll say all forms of hate are bad.
I will say that when you rip down a poster, and this happened so many times all over New York, and it's not the piece of paper, it's what the piece of paper symbolizes, and it's the fact that it happens so much. So I think that when you stand for something, you sometimes you ask yourself, I don't know. I think generally today, specifically with social media, specifically people that are in higher positions and never managed anything in their lives, and this is not just politicians, but it's a lot of the politicians, they become politicians and they don't have the experience. They don't understand how ripple effects go, and they don't understand side effects of something that they do or don't do. And again, specifically with social media, where you can see ripple effects much, much faster than the newspaper of the next day, that is why a symbol like ripping down a poster is such a key thing that happened to the Jewish community in winter of 2023.
Yeah, I think often what sociopaths will do to take advantage of people is they'll poke at first and see how much social trust or social norm they can break. And they'll do it little by little. And I think that's what's been happening with Jews. It's like, how much can we get away with? First, it's the poster. Then it's, calling you genocidal. Then it's calling you a Nazi. And
for me, it's not this. For me, it's the fact that as a minority, we need to explain to the other side why this is hurting our feelings. Like, I don't think other minorities need to kind of like file a complaint or explain this is violent, or this is triggering me, or this goes back to this time when I was, my people were slaughtered.
I think because they view it as a snowball, and if they admit one little thing is anti-Semitism, they admit how much of the movement is steeped in it at its core, and it kind of topples that house of cards for them.
I want to end on a positive note because it's very dark. So I will tell you that I'm not an optimistic person, but I am a hopeful person. And I think I didn't come up with this line. I stole it from someone. And I think that that the film also ends on a very dark note with the coexistence in New York kind of like shattered, or the social fabric torn. But I think that if we have more difficult conversations, there is hope. If we help someone on the subway, no matter who they are, there is hope, and we need to be active in doing it. But I just want to believe that there is another way.
Conversations and dialogue is the only alternative to violence and war. So between us two, we're open to speak with anyone. Zohran Mamdani, if you're watching this, please come see Nim's film. Yes. Come on this podcast. I'll speak with anyone, so will Nim. So yeah, there's a spot on the couch for you, and I'm honored to be in your presence of someone who shares that.
You're talking to me or Zohran?
To you. Oh. Now, Zohran, I hope you feel the same way as us. But I'm speaking to you now that, I align with you in that I'm always willing to have a conversation with someone, and I do believe that's the only way you can have a civil democracy.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.